Life used to feel straightforward. My twin brother Ryan and I were always competing, despite being born just 2 minutes apart. Our parents, with their odd sense of humor, named us Ethan and Ryan, knights of legend. But our relationship was far from noble. Ryan, with his charm and effortless talent, always seemed to shine, while I was stuck trying to measure up. It's funny how those early dynamics stay with you, shaping who you become. My marriage to Samantha felt like another version of that same competition. When we first met, she seemed perfect, smart, driven, and beautiful. We built a life, kids, a home in the suburbs, stable jobs. But somewhere along the way, something got lost. What once felt like love turned into a routine, a lifeless partnership devoid of real connection. That morning, things hit a breaking point. As I rushed out of the house, I doubled over and vomited. It wasn't just the greasy fast food from the night before. It felt like years of bitterness and frustration spilling out. The weight of my broken marriage hit me hard. Samantha followed me outside, barefoot, her voice pleading, but I wasn't in the mood to listen. I shook her off and sped away, her voice drowned by the car's engine. In the rearview mirror, I saw her standing there in her bathrobe, arms crossed. She looked concerned, but not enough to stop me. The realization that there was no love left between us hurt more than catching her with another man. It wasn't a sudden shock, just an old truth I'd been avoiding. At Ryan's apartment, he opened the door, clearly puzzled by my sudden appearance. I pushed past him and collapsed onto his messy couch, irritated by the usual clutter, dirty dishes and clothes strewn everywhere. He had been playing video games, as always. "Everything okay, bro?" he asked. I ignored him. He shrugged and went back to his game. Watching him, so carefree, made my frustration boil over. "Aren't you supposed to be at work?" I snapped. "Aren't you?" he shot back, without even looking away from the screen. "That did it. Can you turn that crap off? What are you, 16? I barked. Ryan shrugged, unfazed. Nothing ever seemed to bother him. "What's your problem?" he asked, his tone calm as always. That was typical Ryan. He never got rattled. My rage boiled over, and before I could stop myself, I grabbed his controller and hurled it against the wall. "What the hell, Ethan?" he yelled, standing up. "What's wrong with you?" "You." I jabbed my finger into his chest. "You're what's wrong with me. If you've got a problem, leave," he said coldly. "This is my place. Go back to your wife." That hit a nerve. Blinded by anger, I lunged at him, but Ryan had always been stronger. He easily overpowered me, pinning me down. Somewhere in the chaos, I must have blacked out. When I came to, Ryan was on the phone. "I don't know what's up with him," he said. Seeing me awake, he smirked and tossed me an ice pack. "Done acting like an idiot? Why'd you call Samantha?" I groaned. "She's your wife. She should deal with you. Call her back. Tell her I left or died. I don't care. I can't talk to her right now." Ryan's expression softened. "What's going on, Ethan? You show up here, swinging at me, then pass out. Spill it." Reluctantly, I recounted the day's events. How I hadn't expected Samantha to be home. How the strange car outside hadn't seemed odd at first. I was too focused on getting to the bathroom to notice anything. But when I saw them together, everything changed. Ryan's face hardened. "That witch," he muttered. "Screw her." I laughed bitterly. Funny, that's exactly what that guy was doing. Ignoring my sarcasm, Ryan started pacing. "Who is he? Do we know him? Please tell me it's not Brian." No, it wasn't Brian, but he looked familiar. Before we could say more, a knock at the door interrupted us. It was Samantha. Ryan didn't flinch. "He's gone," he said coldly, shutting the door in her face. When he returned, I gave him a grateful nod, and we sat in silence. But I knew I couldn't stay there forever. Eventually, I'd have to face her. When I got home, everything looked disturbingly normal. Samantha stood in the living room, waiting. "We need to talk," she said softly. I sighed but didn't respond. She started apologizing, but it sounded hollow, more about getting caught than genuine regret. I mocked her words, throwing them back at her with biting sarcasm. We argued, circling around the real issue without ever confronting it directly. Finally, I asked, When's the last time we made love? She hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. What does that have to do with anything? It's like you were just doing me a favor, I said bitterly. But with him, you're enthusiastic. She didn't answer, and I knew I was just trying to provoke her. I wanted her to feel something, anything, that matched my pain. But she couldn't, because she hadn't been the one betrayed. I had kept my vows. I had stayed faithful. After a long silence, I finally asked, "Do you still love me, Samantha?" Her hesitation said it all. Yes, but not in the same way. Not anymore. I repeated her words quietly. Not in that way. The confirmation stung. Exhausted, I stood to leave, but she grabbed my hand. Don't run away. We need to finish this. What's left to say? You don't love me, I muttered. That's not what I said, she insisted. You're twisting my words. Oh, right. Because you understand me so well, I sneered. Tell me, Samantha, when did you stop loving me? Before or after you started screwing him? Her eyes narrowed. Being an idiot won't make this easier. My mistake. I didn't realize how tough this was for you, I said, voice dripping with sarcasm. She opened her mouth to respond but stopped herself. Her patience had run out. You know what, Ethan? You're right. I should stop apologizing. No matter what I say, you'll just twist it around. I couldn't help myself. Was that you sparing my feelings? Her expression turned cold. Yeah, I was sparing your feelings. I wasn't going to tell you that you're a boring, overweight man who's terrible in bed, or that the last time we actually had fun was before I got pregnant. But since you insist, her words cut deep. I wanted the truth, but not like that. So, I lashed out. Well, when your wife just lies there like a blow-up doll, what do you expect? She didn't flinch. Calmly, she delivered the final blow. If you'd seen me with Logan, you'd know what I'm like with a man who knows what he's doing. Those words cut deeper than anything I'd heard before. My pride crumbled as I stood there, stunned, her voice echoing in my head. She must have noticed the impact because her anger shifted to regret. Ethan, I didn't mean it. I'm sorry, she said softly, but I walked out before she could finish. The next morning, I woke in the guest room, disoriented and late for work. Her harsh words, boring, overweight man, repeated in my mind as I stared at my reflection in the mirror. Before last night, I thought life was steady. I had a good job, a nice house, and kids in private school. Sure, it wasn't perfect, but it felt stable. Apparently, stability wasn't enough for her. As I left the bathroom, we crossed paths awkwardly in the hallway. I need to wake Ben, she said stiffly. Okay, I muttered. We went our separate ways, and I was relieved to leave the house. At work, I tried to focus, but my mind kept wandering back to Samantha and her betrayal. Those words wouldn't stop haunting me. By mid-morning, my phone buzzed. A text from her. Last night got out of hand. We need to talk without the petty nonsense. I clenched my jaw but forced myself to stay calm. After a few moments, I replied, agreed. We'll talk tonight. Her response came quickly. Okay. See you then. The rest of the day dragged on. While visiting one of our stores, I watched Jason, the young, fit manager, work with ease. He reminded me of what I wasn't. Her words replayed in my head. A man who knows what he's doing. How do you stay in shape, Jason? I asked, trying to sound casual. He handed me a gym card with a grin. Check it out sometime, he said. I shoved it into my wallet, unsure if I'd ever use it. That evening, Samantha and I sat at the kitchen table in silence until I finally broke it. Why, Samantha? I asked quietly. Tears welled in her eyes. Because I'm not attracted to you anymore, she said. We've lost the spark. I clenched my teeth. And I'm bad in bed? I'm sorry for what I said yesterday. I was angry, she whispered. But is it true? I pressed. Her silence answered that question. I took a deep breath, frustration boiling over. Why didn't you tell me how you felt? Why let this go on for years? I tried, she said defensively. At first, I brought it up, but nothing changed. Eventually, I convinced myself I had no right to be unhappy. You never told me I was bad in bed. But I did mention your weight, she countered. How was I supposed to know that meant you were miserable? I shot back. I thought it was just a rough patch. Why didn't you try harder to fix things? She bristled. I wasn't the one cheating. No, but if you were so unhappy, you should have said something instead of sneaking around. I fired back, my voice rising. A tense silence followed before she quietly said, I think we should get a divorce, Ethan. Her words landed hard. Maybe it was logical, but it still hurt. I should have been the one to walk away first, but I hadn't. I was still holding on, hoping for something to salvage. Of course you do, I said bitterly. Forget the twins, right? Just end it because you need better sex. You said yourself you weren't happy either, she snapped. Yeah, but I started, but stopped. She was already done. Nothing I said would change that. I grabbed my coat and headed for the door. She didn't stop me. Just as I reached for the doorknob, I paused. Who is he? I asked without turning around. Logan, she said softly. His name is Logan. He works with me. Logan, I repeated, remembering him from an office party. You two danced a lot that night. We weren't sleeping together then, she added quickly, but you were flirting. She sighed. Fine. Maybe there was some attraction, but it didn't get serious until we started meeting at the gym. Of course, I muttered bitterly. The gym. That's where you decided to ruin our marriage because I'm just the fat, boring guy. Ethan. And he's great in bed, right? Turns you into a nympho? She winced. I'm sorry I said that. Whatever, I muttered and left. I drove straight to my brother Ryan's place. He opened the door without a word, stepping aside to let me in. Staying over? He asked. Yeah. He handed me a blanket. Here you go. Thanks. No problem. Just don't do anything stupid, or I'll have to knock sense into you, he joked before heading to bed. I spread the blanket on the couch, washed up, and caught my reflection in the mirror. I shook my head and returned to the couch. How had it come to this? I worked hard, stayed loyal, tried to be a good husband. Yet here I was, crashing on my brother's couch like I was the one who messed up. Sleep didn't come easily. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Samantha with Logan. At the gym, at work, laughing, flirting. Did they ever talk about me? Compare us? The thought hurt more than her words. Eventually, exhaustion took over, but I woke when Ryan started getting ready for work. He grabbed a yogurt, eating it while leaning against the counter. Going to work today? He asked, glancing at me. I don't know. Maybe, I replied. He tossed the empty cup into the trash and shrugged. Don't let that which drag you down. Move on. Plenty of women out there. I didn't answer. Ryan's advice, though meant to help, felt clueless. He thought I was dealing with a typical breakup, not a 12-year marriage falling apart. Life had always seemed easier for him. He had the looks and charm, while I worked hard for everything. After a week of crashing at his place, it was clear we both needed some space. Samantha texted me several times, asking where I was and if I planned to come back. I ignored her until she mentioned the twins were asking about me. That got to me. I couldn't keep avoiding them. I decided to head home, but planned to do it when the house was empty. When I pulled into the driveway, I saw her car already there. Reluctantly, I went inside and found her packing my clothes in the bedroom. You're finally back, she said, barely looking up. What are you doing with my clothes? I asked, trying to stay calm. I wasn't sure if you were coming back, so I thought I'd save you the trouble. You knew where I was, Samantha. You left me to handle the kids alone, she snapped. Do you remember why I left in the first place? I shot back. After a brief silence, she sighed. Okay, it's my fault. I was wrong for cheating, and you have every right to be angry. Did you ever love me? I asked quietly, needing to know. I did. I still do, in a way, she replied, making it clear that love had changed for her. Realizing nothing could be salvaged, I said, I'll move my stuff to the guest room. She nodded, her expression somber. Trying to ease the tension, I added, I'm getting a new bed for that room. She chuckled weakly. Yeah, you got that bed to keep Ryan from staying too long. Guess that backfired. I managed a small laugh. We moved my things in silence, both of us silently agreeing to keep things civil, at least for now. That evening, we sat the twins down to explain what was happening. Watching their faces crumble as we told them about the separation was almost unbearable. I couldn't even look at Samantha, knowing she was the one who caused this pain. Over the next few weeks, life dragged on. I contacted a lawyer, who explained we'd have to be separated for a year before filing for divorce. Discussions with Samantha about the separation were heated. She wanted to date openly, but I insisted she keep it away from the kids. After 2 weeks, I moved out and into a small apartment. The place felt empty, both literally and emotionally. One evening, as I sat alone in the silent apartment, a commercial for the gym Jason had recommended played on TV. On a whim, I decided to check it out. When I arrived, I felt completely out of place, but Tina, the manager, greeted me warmly. "You look unsure. Want a quick tour?" she offered. Hesitant but curious, I agreed. As she showed me around, a wall of before and after photos caught my eye. Tina pointed to one. "That was me when I first joined," she said. I blinked in surprise. The woman in the before photo looked completely different. "I gained a lot of weight during my pregnancy," she explained. "My husband bought me a treadmill for Christmas. I didn't appreciate it at first, but with my brother-in-law's help, I lost over 75 pounds. "Wow," I said, genuinely impressed. "So, Ethan, don't feel out of place. We all start somewhere. Maybe one day, your picture will be up there too," she added with a kind smile. Her encouragement convinced me, and I signed up for a membership. I started with a beginner program, where a trainer showed me how to use the equipment and shared tips on effective workouts. Wanting to commit, I booked weekly one-on-one sessions with a trainer named Alex, every Wednesday at 8 a.m., to help me create a personalized routine. I also tried out various classes. The Thursday biking class turned out to be fun, while yoga, well, not so much. Meeting others on similar journeys helped me feel less alone. The gym became my sanctuary, a place where I could channel my frustrations. Unfortunately, things with Samantha didn't improve. One evening, I visited the kids and found Samantha's niece babysitting. "Where's Samantha?" I asked casually. She looked nervous. "Out. Probably with Logan," she mumbled. I stayed with the kids, sending the niece home. Samantha returned around 11 p.m., clearly surprised to see me. She looked stunning in a black dress, but her disheveled hair and smudged makeup made it obvious she hadn't just been out dancing. "I came to see the kids. Since I was here, I sent Penny home. If I'd known you'd be this late." I trailed off, too drained to argue. "I didn't know you were coming." "I'm sorry," she said quietly, avoiding eye contact. I shook my head and stood up. "No worries. Crap happens," I said flatly, grabbing my coat. As I headed for the door, she said softly, "Thanks for paying Penny." "No problem." "Good night, Samantha," I replied and walked out. Months passed. I stayed consistent with my workouts at the gym, but progress was slow. One day, after an especially grueling session, I stepped on the scale, only to find I'd lost just 10 pounds in 3 months. Frustrated and angry, I stormed out, feeling like life was unfair. Outside, Tina noticed my mood and approached me. "Rough day?" she asked gently. Before I knew it, I unloaded everything. My struggles with weight loss, my failed marriage, my kids, even my brother Ryan's clueless advice. She listened without interrupting, then asked a question that caught me off guard. "What do you really want, Ethan?" I paused before admitting, "I want to feel good about myself." She smiled knowingly. "Losing weight is great, but it won't make you happy on its own. Real self-esteem comes from within. You need to see your worth beyond what's in the mirror." Her words hit home. She handed me a card. "My brother-in-law Kevin is a personal trainer and life coach. If you're serious about making a change, give him a call." A week later, I met Kevin. He was fit, focused, and a bit intimidating, but I could tell he knew his stuff. Kevin was all business, strict and unyielding. "This won't be easy," he warned on day one. His approach left no room for excuses. He even inspected my kitchen and grilled me about my habits. Despite his cold demeanor, I agreed to follow his intense regimen. It started with a meeting with a nutritionist who broke down just how unhealthy my diet was. I learned the importance of cooking my own meals and cut out most of the junk I was used to eating. The workouts, on the other hand, were brutal. My whole body ached, and even simple tasks felt like challenges. I was constantly hungry and exhausted, but no matter how drained I felt, I still made time for my kids. Samantha, to her credit, made it easier. She didn't mind me dropping by unannounced and insisted I keep my key, something I figured was an unspoken truce to maintain stability for the kids. I wanted to believe she genuinely cared about doing what was right, though maybe guilt played a role too. Despite the uneasy peace, jealousy gnawed at me. It started as harmless curiosity, just looking around the house when I thought she wouldn't notice. I wasn't trying to find anything specific, but I couldn't help myself. The first odd thing I saw was a new toothbrush in the bathroom. Then I noticed men's body wash in the shower. My heart sank when I found a pair of boxers in her laundry basket. Seeing another man's things mixed with hers felt like a gut punch, as if someone else was encroaching on what used to be my life. I kept my discovery to myself. I didn't want her knowing I'd been snooping. It felt like my only way to stay ahead, to gather information while appearing indifferent. I even asked the kids if they'd noticed anyone new around, but they seemed clueless. Samantha, it seemed, was keeping her end of the deal by not involving them. Her dates likely happened while they were at school or on nights out. Still, despite my best efforts to act unaffected, I was sure Samantha sensed my pain. It's hard to hide that kind of hurt for long. Sometimes, when she caught me watching her, she'd give me a guilty look, as if she knew how easily she was moving on while I remained stuck in a loop of regret. It hurt more than I wanted to admit, but Kevin's workouts became a kind of therapy. His harsh commands during exercises and sarcastic remarks about my progress helped channel my frustration. Work also became a refuge. At the office, things were straightforward. Results mattered. If something wasn't working, you fixed it. I often wished relationships worked the same way. The months passed both quickly and painfully slow. Every day was a grind, but the pain reminded me I was still alive. Slowly, I grew stronger, both physically and emotionally. Without realizing it, my heart started to harden, and the overwhelming sting of Samantha's betrayal dulled bit by bit. By the time we neared the 1-year mark of our separation, our relationship had shifted so much that it felt unrecognizable. The change became clear one night when I was waiting for Samantha to return so I could leave. The kids were already asleep, and I was sitting in the kitchen when I accidentally spilled soda on my shirt. Not wanting to leave it stained, I tossed it in the wash. I figured Samantha wouldn't be home for a while, so I stood by the dryer, waiting in just my jeans, feeling oddly self-conscious. I didn't notice she had come home early until I heard her footsteps stop behind me. Turning around, I saw her standing there, staring at me with wide eyes. Her expression made me nervous. I grabbed the half-dry shirt from the dryer, fumbling awkwardly to cover myself. Hey Samantha, how was your night? I asked, trying to sound casual, though my voice came out strained. It was fine, she replied slowly, not breaking eye contact. The tension was palpable. Her gaze felt like it was comparing me to someone else, silently measuring me against her new man. It took all my pride not to flee the room. Instead, I straightened up, forcing myself to remain composed. The kids are in bed, dinner's done, and homework's finished. I'm heading out now. Mind if I use your bathroom before I leave? I didn't wait for an answer before walking away. In the bathroom, I finally untangled the damp shirt. Before putting it on, I caught a glimpse of myself in the large mirror above the sink. My reflection stopped me cold. My apartment only had a small mirror, just enough to shave with, and after my disappointing experience on the scale months ago, I'd been avoiding mirrors altogether. But this mirror revealed my entire torso. What I saw stunned me. My chest had definition. My midsection was noticeably slimmer, the excess fat that once bulged out now flattened. My shoulders had broadened, giving me a more balanced, V-shaped build. No, I wasn't magazine cover ready, but I looked far better than the overweight, out-of-shape man I had grown used to seeing. For the first time in years, I saw an attractive man staring back at me, and that man was me. Was that why Samantha had been staring at me earlier? Maybe she wasn't disgusted. Maybe she noticed the change too. Maybe Samantha was still attracted to me. That moment in her bathroom felt like a turning point. For the first time in a long while, I felt genuinely worthy. When I left, I walked past her casually. All right, Samantha, I'm off. Have a good night. Her eyes lingered on me, but this time I didn't shy away. I embraced her gaze, though I acted like I didn't notice. Good night, Ethan, she said softly, her voice carrying a new tone. With a renewed sense of confidence, I walked out the door with a bit of a swagger. That moment marked the beginning of a shift in my attitude. I started noticing the changes I had made without fully realizing it. My clothes fit differently, dress shirts no longer strained at the collar, and my waist size had dropped from 44 to 36. Everyday tasks became easier. I could bend down without grunting, tie my shoes without spreading my legs awkwardly, and get in and out of the car with ease. Kevin picked up on my transformation right away. The fatigue I once carried had lifted. Weights felt lighter, the treadmill wasn't as daunting, and I had more energy. I even found myself checking my reflection more often during workouts. Kevin didn't miss a chance to tease me about it. Looks like someone finally noticed the results of his hard work, he joked. Yeah, you caught me, I admitted, grinning. Oh, go ahead and admire yourself, he said, stepping aside dramatically. I wouldn't want to stand in the way of love at first sight. Thanks, idiot. Always looking out for me. I laughed, nearly dropping the weights from how hard I was laughing. It was one of the rare moments where Kevin treated me less like a recruit and more like a friend. I noticed other changes, too. People interacted with me differently. They seemed friendlier, smiled more, and lingered longer during conversations. It felt shallow, but I couldn't deny the truth. Attractive people get treated better. Samantha wasn't immune to this either. Ever since that night at her house, she'd been more attentive, smiling more, brushing her hair back in a way that felt almost flirtatious. She no longer looked at me with pity, but with something closer to respect. Everything came to a head on the anniversary of our separation. I'd contacted my lawyer and asked him to prepare the divorce papers. I didn't want to serve them to Samantha through a process server. That felt too cold. We were in a decent place, and I believed our marriage deserved a respectful ending. That night, I found Samantha upstairs in front of the mirror, putting on earrings. I knocked on the doorframe, catching her attention. Oh, hey, Ethan, she said, turning to face me. She spread her arms and asked, How do I look? You look beautiful, but I'm sure you already knew that, I replied, smiling. Her eyes roved over me in that familiar way. No, just trying on clothes to see how they fit. Do you remember this dress? She asked, twirling slightly. I took a closer look and burst out laughing. Isn't that the dress I bought you for your birthday? What was it, 8 years ago? She smiled brightly. 9 years ago. Remember? I saw it in the window and mentioned I liked it. You said we couldn't afford it, but you didn't tell me you'd gotten that promotion. Then you surprised me with the dress and the news. I remember, I said, feeling a wave of nostalgia. We celebrated that night at that new Italian place, she added softly, her gaze distant. That's also the night we conceived the twins. For a moment, I was caught up in the pleasant memory of how close we were back then. But as quickly as the memory came, it turned dark. I pictured myself struggling to please her while she lay half asleep, only for the image of Logan to intrude, replacing me in my mind. Though I didn't remember his face, the idea of him haunted me. The room grew heavy with unspoken tension. Shaking off the thoughts, I said, I have something for you. I dropped a manila envelope on the bed. Samantha's expression darkened as she glanced at it. Wow, you didn't waste any time, did you? She said bitterly. Well, it did take me a year, I joked, trying to ease the tension. She didn't smile or laugh. Instead, she turned back to the mirror, her face blank. I'll look at them when I get a chance, she said flatly, dismissing me. Puzzled by her reaction, I left the room. I hadn't expected her to celebrate, but I thought she'd at least be relieved to move forward. I found Ben first, playing video games in his room. Is your homework done? I asked sternly. He spun around, guilt flashing across his face. Almost, he mumbled. Finish it now, I said, crossing my arms. Okay, he grumbled, turning off the game. He muttered something under his breath, but I chose to ignore it. Sometimes, it's better to walk away before you escalate something minor into a bigger issue. Next, I found Chloe sitting in the living room, flipping through a photo album. I recognized it instantly, our wedding album. No need to ask about homework. She was always on top of it. I sat beside her and put an arm around her. She leaned into me, quiet but comforted by my presence. "Hey, pumpkin, what are you looking at?" I asked, sitting down beside Chloe. "You're in Mommy's wedding pictures," she said, pausing on one of me and Ryan in our tuxedos. "You look the same, especially now that you lost all that weight. You look really handsome now." "So, I wasn't handsome before?" I teased, grinning as she tried to backtrack. After a few seconds, I let her off the hook. "Just kidding. Thanks for the compliment." She smiled and leaned into me, but her expression quickly turned serious. "Are you and Mommy ever going to get back together?" she asked. I sighed, wishing I could avoid this conversation. "No, sweetie, I don't think so," I answered honestly, thinking of the divorce papers sitting on Samantha's bed. "Why not?" she pressed. "Sometimes adults realize they can't stay married, but that doesn't mean we don't love you." "So, you and Mommy don't love each other anymore?" She wasn't letting up, and I could see through her innocent question. She wanted a simple answer to something far more complicated. "We care about each other, but not like husband and wife anymore. That's why we have to live apart. But we'll always be friends, and we'll always love you and Ben." Chloe looked down, sad but quiet. I kissed her forehead, but it felt like a small gesture against her big questions. Explaining divorce to a 9-year-old is tough. To kids, it's simple. If you love each other, you stay together. Why can't life be that simple? As Chloe flipped through more pages, I noticed movement behind us and turned to see Samantha walking away quietly. I wondered how much of our conversation she had overheard. A few nights later, I decided to join my weekly biking class. I hadn't been in a while since starting Kevin's program, and there were a few unfamiliar faces. I spotted someone familiar and took the bike next to her. "Hey, Rachel," I greeted cheerfully. She turned, smiling when she recognized me. "Ethan, long time no see. I almost didn't recognize you. You've slimmed down. Too good to work out with us now? Where have you been?" she teased, her eyes scanning me with subtle appreciation. I blushed slightly. "I've been around, just working out at different times. How have we not run into each other?" "Like I said, you're too good for us now," she joked, nudging me playfully. "Trust me, you're definitely not fat," I said before realizing how it sounded. As soon as the words left my mouth, I felt awkward. She didn't seem to mind, but I quickly looked away, unsure if I should apologize or pretend it didn't happen. Thankfully, the trainer started class, saving me from further embarrassment. After class, as Rachel walked past, she brushed my shoulder and smiled. "Don't be a stranger," she said, her tone light and playful as she sashayed out of the room. I wondered if she was flirting with me. After being married for so long, I wasn't sure how to read the signs anymore. Over the next few weeks, I kept attending the class just to see Rachel. Each time, she was warm and playful, and I grew more convinced she was interested. I wanted to ask her out, but I kept chickening out at the last moment. Kevin, of course, noticed me checking her out a few times but didn't say anything. At least, not right away. He had that knowing smirk, though, like he was just waiting to stir the pot. One day, Rachel walked up to me after class, looking amused but slightly confused. "Your friend over there said you had something to ask me," she said, pointing at Kevin, who was standing in the distance, grinning and winking. I mentally cursed him. Yeah," I stammered, caught off guard. She waited patiently, so I gathered my courage and finally went for it. "I was wondering if you'd like to do something together sometime." She looked thoughtful for a moment, and I braced myself for rejection. But then she smiled brightly. "Are you asking me out?" she asked, her enthusiasm giving me the confidence to respond. "Yes, I am. Would you like to go out with me?" She handed me a piece of paper with her number on it. "Call me tonight." Seeing my confusion, she laughed. "Your friend bet me you wouldn't ask me out because you were too chicken." "Really?" I turned and glared at Kevin. "Yep, but I had faith in you. Now I'm $10 richer thanks to you." "Happy to help. Let me know anytime I can make him a loser," I joked, and we both laughed. She reminded me to call her after 8 before walking off. As soon as she left, Kevin strolled over with a smug look on his face. "What did she want?" he asked, pretending to be clueless. She came over to tell me what an intrusive a hole you are, I replied, throwing my towel at him. He shrugged, laughing as he walked away. That night, I faced another dilemma. I hadn't been on a first date in over a decade. I had no idea where to take Rachel or what to expect. Were dating rules still the same as when I courted Samantha? My mind raced with questions. Dinner? A movie? Something more adventurous? Surprisingly, Ryan gave the best advice. Dinner and movies are boring first dates. Take her somewhere unexpected. Excitement works every time. Weapon range, batting cage, something fun. I didn't think I had anything exciting enough to teach her, but then Ryan suggested something obvious. Why not go for a bike ride? Didn't you meet her in a biking class? I called Rachel, and she loved the idea. That Saturday, we packed our bikes into my SUV and headed to the trail. At first, it seemed like a great plan, but biking on a first date turned out to be sweatier and more awkward than I'd expected. It didn't leave much room for conversation, and when we stopped for breaks, we were too busy catching our breath to talk much. I started to worry the date was a bust. Samantha's taunt about me being boring echoed in my mind. Then, something unexpected happened. A panicked kid ran up to us, yelling incoherently. We tried to calm him down, but he was too upset to explain. Eventually, he waved frantically, urging us to follow him. When we reached the spot, a man was lying on the ground, clutching someone dangling over the cliff. Please help them, the boy cried. My instincts kicked in. I'll grab him. You two help the kid, I told Rachel. She stood back as we pulled them to safety. Watching the son hug his exhausted father was incredibly moving. The man whispered something to his son before passing out. Rachel had already called emergency services. When the paramedics arrived, they took over while the police asked us a few questions. Before leaving, I found a cell phone on the ground, likely belonging to the man. I called a contact labeled Linda Wife to inform her, then handed the phone to the police. I thought the whole thing had ruined the date, but Rachel was thrilled. Oh my God, you saved that guy and his kid. You're a hero, she gushed. It was all three of us, I said, trying to downplay it. No, she insisted. You acted without hesitation. That was the bravest thing I've ever seen. The night ended with a passionate kiss and plans for a second date. Our second date was more traditional, dinner and conversation. I learned that Rachel had 2 kids, one in high school. The night ended with us making out on her porch. Everything was going well until our third date, which fell on Valentine's Day. We saw 50 Shades of Grey, and it clearly stirred something in her. Back at her place, she hinted that her kids were away and invited me in. Her intentions were obvious. But as things heated up, all I could hear in my head were Samantha's cruel words about my inadequacy. The pressure became too much, and I had to stop. I'm sorry, Rachel. I'm not ready, I said, holding back tears as I rushed out, leaving her confused. After that, I avoided her in the gym, sticking close to Kevin during workouts. It was childish, but I couldn't face her after what happened. Deep-seated insecurities that Samantha had planted resurfaced. Whenever I saw Rachel talking or laughing with someone, I imagined they were mocking me. These thoughts isolated me further, and my workouts began to suffer. Kevin noticed my change in attitude. Come on, King Ethan, what's up with you? He snapped one day when I quit early on the treadmill. I'm just not feeling it today, I muttered. Not feeling it? Want to retire to your chambers, he mocked, his sarcasm hitting a nerve. Back off, Kevin. I'm not in the mood for your crap, I snapped, instantly regretting my outburst. I tried to soften my tone. I'm just going through a lot. I need a break. So, you want to take a break and call me when you feel better? He asked, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Despite knowing he was mocking me, the idea of a break sounded appealing. I just need you to ease up a bit, I said, hoping for some understanding. To my surprise, he shrugged. Sure, why not? Really? Yeah. I don't want to waste time on someone who can't get their act together. Let's end this session so I can focus on clients who actually care. What the hell, Kevin? I asked, stunned. After all my hard work, I'm not worth a second chance? He ignored me until I chased after him, desperate for an explanation. So, I need one day and you drop me? After everything, I'm not worth it? Kevin stopped, turned, and shoved me against a machine. His voice was low and furious. You know what you are, Ethan? A winner. You want sympathy because your wife didn't appreciate you? Life doesn't work that way. Winners get back up and prove people wrong. Losers whine. His words cut deep, igniting a fire in me. So, what are you, King Ethan? A winner or a winner? He challenged, smirking. My anger boiled over, but instead of lashing out, I turned and climbed back on the treadmill. Fueled by rage, I ran faster and harder than ever, pushing myself to the limit. When the treadmill finally stopped, I stormed off to the locker room, still fuming. Kevin followed and sat down quietly beside me. After a long pause, he finally opened up. I proposed to my wife 3 times before she said yes. She kept turning me down because she was in love with another man. I stared at him, shocked by his sudden vulnerability. Who was the other guy? I asked. Her husband, he replied, his voice heavy with emotion. She was a widow, and no matter what I did, I always felt like I couldn't measure up. It was the first time Kevin had shown me this side of himself. He explained how he'd tried everything to prove he was good enough, but in the end, she only saw him as a friend. So, how did you deal with that? I asked, genuinely curious. I tried everything, but it didn't change how she felt. Eventually, I realized something important. If you've done everything you can and it's still not enough, it's not on you. It's on them. Her rejection didn't make me any less worthy. It just meant she couldn't appreciate what I had to offer. His story gave me a new perspective. He wasn't just a tough drill sergeant. He was someone who had fought his own battles. Confidence based on others' approval is shallow, he said. Real worth comes from within. You have to know your value. Ethan, don't let someone else's opinion dictate your worth. Kevin shared how, after he broke things off with his now wife, she eventually realized what she'd lost and fought to be with him. They'd been happily married for 5 years. He also mentioned something he called the 80-20 rule. People often take the 80% they have for granted, while chasing the 20% they're missing. I push you because I don't want you to take things for granted, or feel entitled. His words struck a chord. Kevin wasn't trying to break me. He was pushing me to be better. I saw him differently after that, not just as a coach, but as someone who genuinely cared. You're not some pathetic guy who needs pity. You've got strength, determination, and honor. Once you stop seeing yourself through your wife's eyes, you'll realize you're King Ethan. Start acting like it. Kevin's words echoed in my mind as I hit the showers, letting the warm water soothe my aching muscles. He was right. I'd spent too much time judging myself by others' standards, comparing myself to Ryan because everyone else did, believing Samantha's cruel words that I wasn't worth fighting for. Even my worth at work only felt real when validated by others. But self-worth doesn't work that way. You have to believe in yourself, even when no one else does. Weight loss alone wouldn't fix that. It had to come from within. Later that night, I was jolted from sleep by my phone ringing. Groggily, I saw it was 4 a.m., and the caller ID read Ryan. What Ryan? I answered, annoyed. Did I wake you? He asked, sounding uncharacteristically nervous. You think? I snapped, now fully awake, sensing something was wrong. What's going on? He hesitated before blurting out, Emma's pregnant. I frowned, confused. Who the hell is Emma? The girl you met on our birthday, he reminded me. After a moment, I remembered the young blonde cheerleader he'd introduced as his girlfriend. She's legal, right? I asked skeptically. She's 20 and has her own apartment. Ryan snapped, defensive. Did you check her ID? I teased, which only frustrated him more. Do you always have to be such a smug prick? He shot back. Do you always have to act like an irresponsible teenager? You're 35, Ryan. Ever heard of protection? I retorted. His tone turned cold. You know what, Ethan? Get over yourself. You think you're perfect, always looking down on me. You've always been mom and dad's favorite, the golden boy. Meanwhile, I'm the screw-up. I should have felt sympathy, but his whining only irritated me more. Spare me, Ryan. Everyone worships you, the football star. Mom and dad always bail you out. But when my life fell apart, I was on my own. I was always the one being compared to you, he snapped. Every time they helped me, They tell me to be more like you. And you? You act like no one helps you. But when Samantha cheated on you, whose couch did you crash on? Who ran interference with the kids? Me. I've always been there for you, even in high school when I fought off bullies for you. So cut the crap about being all alone. I was ready to snap back, but something made me stop. I actually listened to what he said, and he was right. Despite our constant fights and my judgments, he'd always been there when I needed him. I started seeing things from his perspective. While I had been jealous of him growing up, I never noticed how much my parents bragged about me because I was too focused on how proud they seemed of him. I'd always seen him as the tall, good-looking guy who had it easy. But from his view, dropping out of college and constantly feeling like a failure weighed heavily on him. Mom and Dad helped him because they didn't believe he could do it alone, and that must have crushed his confidence. Now he was scared. He had a baby on the way and felt incapable of handling it. So he called me, his twin brother, for support. And what did I do? I treated him like crap. You're right, Ryan, I said, without sarcasm or malice. He seemed caught off guard. What? You've always been there for me, no matter what. You've always been the guy I lean on. Thanks, he mumbled, still confused. I took the chance to switch the subject. So, how far along is she? A couple of months, he said quietly. She just told me today. Damn, are you two keeping it? Yeah, he said, the weight of that decision evident in his voice. How do you feel about that? After a pause, he admitted, I'm scared, Ethan. How do I raise a kid? I still live like one. I'm not like you. Ben and Chloe are lucky to have a dad like you. What's my kid gonna think of me? I remembered having the same fears when Samantha was pregnant. Ryan, stop comparing yourself to me. That's the mistake I always made with you. Believe it or not, I've always been jealous of you. Stop nonsense-setting me, Ethan. What the hell are you jealous of? You've got your crap together, especially now that you've lost all that weight. That's just it, Ryan. Neither of us should be jealous of the other. I'm working on fixing my insecurities. Why can't you? If you want to be responsible, then be responsible. If you want to be a good dad, learn how to be one. That's easy for you to say, he grumbled. You're right, it is easy to say, but it takes work. And if anyone can do it, you can. You're one of the strongest people I know. I'd bet on you any day. Really? He asked, genuinely surprised. Absolutely. And I meant it. Ryan might have been reckless at times, but I always believed he had it in him to grow up, and now, I felt that time had come. We ended up talking for 2 more hours. The more we talked, the more I believed he'd be a great dad. He wasn't handling this like his usual carefree self. He was thinking about how his actions would affect his child. Isn't that what all good fathers do? I shared some of my parenting failures, hoping it would make him feel less alone. Some stories made us laugh. Others were cautionary tales. I joked that fate would probably give him a girl as karma, and he laughed at that. Before we hung up, I promised to be there for him, no matter what, and I meant it. As the sun rose, I lay back, feeling a shift in myself. I grew up a little during that conversation. I wasn't jealous of my brother anymore. It wasn't because I realized he had been as jealous of me as I was of him. It was because I finally understood that we both had our struggles, and we both needed each other to get through them. It wasn't just because Ryan and I had cleared the air. It was because I had started seeing myself differently. I wasn't some loser who needed to be fixed. I was the responsible one, the smart one. Those were my strengths, my 80%, and I didn't need to chase the other 20%. For the first time in a long while, I felt content with who I was. I got up and prepared for work, feeling better than I had in months. Life moved forward at a steady pace. My outlook brightened, and everything felt a little lighter. The only downside was that Kevin sensed I didn't need him anymore. My confidence had grown, and with it, my old insecurities faded. Looking back, I realized how calculated his methods were. The snark, the relentless workouts, the tough love. It had all been designed to break me out of my self-pity. He wasn't just a trainer. He was a life coach in disguise, worth every penny. During what ended up being our final workout together, things with Rachel came to a head. I got distracted when she walked by, and Kevin noticed. You gonna keep staring at her, or actually talk to her? He asked with a knowing look. I hadn't realized I was staring until he pointed it out. Embarrassed, I mumbled, "Sorry, Kevin." Getting back to lifting, I quickly grabbed some weights, trying to act like nothing happened. "Look, Ethan," he said cautiously, "I'm not trying to meddle, but it's obvious you want to talk to her. Whatever happened, it can't be worth all this effort to pretend she doesn't exist." "Am I that obvious?" I asked, cringing. "Was that supposed to be subtle?" He snickered. Seeing my horrified expression, he added, "Just go talk to her." "I can't. After what happened, she'll probably just laugh and walk away. Then stop staring at her from across the room." "That's definitely more effective," he quipped smugly. His smugness was infuriating, but I knew he was right. Swallowing my fear, I hurried to catch Rachel before she disappeared into the locker room. "Hey, Rachel," I called out. She turned, looking uncomfortable as her eyes dropped to the floor. "Hey, Ethan," she said quickly, avoiding eye contact. "How've you been?" I asked, my voice betraying my nerves. "Pretty good," she replied, still not meeting my gaze. Gathering my courage, I said, "Listen, I was hoping we could talk, clear the air." She nodded quickly. "When did you want to talk? Are you free now?" "I need to shower first, but we can talk after." "That okay?" "Yeah, sure," I replied, relieved. As she disappeared into the locker room, I exhaled deeply, glad I had gotten through the awkward exchange. Kevin, standing nearby with Tina, gave me a thumbs up. After we both showered, we met at a nearby Golden Corral. Small talk filled the air as we ate, but I could tell Rachel was growing impatient. Finally, I took a deep breath. "I wanted to talk about that night, when things almost happened." She shifted uncomfortably, shaking her head. "You don't have to explain. It's fine. It's not the first time a man hasn't been attracted to me. I'm used to it. My ex-husband wasn't either." I was stunned. "What?" "Yeah," she said with a sad smile. "He used to call me Piggy and poke my stomach, even in front of his friends." Tears welled up in her eyes, and she tried to rush to the bathroom, but I gently grabbed her hand. "Rachel, you've got it all wrong," I said softly. She looked up, and my heart broke seeing the pain in her eyes. "Your ex was an idiot. I don't know what his problem was, but that's not how I feel. I'm attracted to you. You're sexy, fun, and beautiful." "Then why?" she asked, confused. I took a deep breath and told her everything. My story, my fears, my past. She listened intently without interrupting. When I finished, her reaction shocked me. She burst into uncontrollable laughter. "What are you laughing at?" I asked, horrified. This was exactly what I had feared. "I'm not laughing at you," she said, catching her breath. "I'm laughing at us, at this whole ridiculous situation. Both of our exes made us feel worthless, fat, ugly, and bad in bed." "Your ex called you boring too?" I asked, chuckling despite myself. She nodded, trying to suppress another laugh. Soon, we were both laughing so hard we couldn't stop, ignoring the odd looks from people around us. The conversation turned into a contest of who had received the worst insults from their exes. She won, but only because her ex had been at it longer. At least Samantha had kept her disdain hidden until the end. "Well, today turned out differently than I expected," she said, smiling. "I was worried I came on too strong and scared you away. I really liked you, and I didn't want you to see me like he did. For once, I wanted to feel sexy, even if just for one night. So I went all out. When you didn't, I felt like a failure." I smiled back, understanding completely. "I get it. I was so focused on proving Samantha wrong that I ended up proving her right." Talking to Rachel felt different. It was comforting to share with someone who had gone through similar rejection. I didn't feel alone anymore. "So, what do two so-called losers who are bad in bed do together?" I joked. "Own it," she replied with a grin. Then, with mock seriousness, she added, "Hi, my name is Rachel, and I'm bad in bed." "Hi, Rachel," I said, trying not to laugh. As Rachel and I sat together, I realized how much we had in common. Life wasn't always kind, but every now and then, it surprised you with something good. You just had to be open to it. "How about this?" I suggested. "Let's stop trying to prove our exes wrong and just go out again. No pressure, No expectations. Just have fun and get to know each other. She smiled brightly. I like that. No pressure, just fun. Then, with a playful smirk, she added, and if we happen to sleep together, so be it. I nearly fell out of my chair laughing, but her words relaxed me. Yeah, if it happens, it happens, I joked, crossing my fingers. We clinked our cups in a light-hearted toast, unaware that someone familiar was watching us from afar. I didn't learn about it until weeks later. Why does Samantha make everything so difficult? I muttered as I stood in her bedroom doorway, trying to keep my cool. No matter how hard I tried to move on, she always found a way to drag things out. She still hadn't signed the divorce papers, and it was driving me crazy. We discussed it numerous times, but she brushed it off every time, acting like it wasn't urgent. Her indifferent attitude only made me angrier. I wanted closure, needed it, but she seemed determined to keep me tied to her. Samantha, what's the problem? I asked, trying to stay calm as she sat in bed, applying lotion like I wasn't even there. She had the audacity to look smug in new lingerie, probably a gift from her boyfriend. You can't expect me to sign without a lawyer reviewing the papers, she said with a condescending smile. They've been sitting on your dresser for a month. How's your lawyer supposed to review them if you haven't even shown them to him? She sighed, exasperated. I haven't found a lawyer yet, Ethan. When I do, I'll have him look at them. Now calm down. You'll wake the kids. Sit down. Relax. You look stressed. She patted the bed beside her, as if inviting me to chat like nothing was wrong. I counted to 5, forcing myself not to explode. What do you mean you haven't found a lawyer yet? I wasn't expecting you to just drop the papers on me. I thought we'd talk about it first, she said, as if that were a reasonable excuse. I'm pretty sure we covered everything when you called me a fat, boring loser who's bad in bed. Ethan, she whined, clearly gearing up for another round of the same old argument. I cut her off, steering the conversation back on track. When are you planning to get a lawyer? Have you even been looking? Instead of answering, she deflected. Why the sudden rush? You didn't seem to care before. Are you kidding me? I snapped. You're the one who wanted this divorce. You found me so repulsive that you sought out other men. Now I'm giving you what you want, and you're making it hard for me. Her haughty attitude softened. I'm not trying to make this difficult for you, she said, and maybe she was telling the truth. Throughout our separation, she'd never intentionally made things harder. But after everything, trust was in short supply. Then sign the papers. They're as fair as I could make them. She hesitated. I just think we should talk first. No, Samantha. There's nothing left to discuss, I said, my patience gone. She fell silent. Realizing that yelling wouldn't help, I took a deep breath and added, I'm not trying to screw you over. I'm just trying to move on. But I can't do that with the weight of our marriage holding me down. It's too much. I hadn't meant to be so blunt, but the words came out before I could stop them. Her eyes welled up with tears. I'm sorry, Ethan. I've been really terrible to you, she admitted. I didn't respond, just listened. When she realized I wasn't going to say anything, she asked, Can you ever forgive me? Could I? Could I truly move past the day her words shattered me? Over time, the pain had dulled, and that day became just another chapter in my life. I do forgive you, Samantha, I said. She smiled, relieved. Really? Yes. Now, I just want to move forward. Relief washed over her face. That's all I've wanted, to know you forgive me. Feeling positive about how the conversation was going, I added, Great. Now you can sign the papers with a clear conscience. Her smile faded into disappointment, then anger. Wait, are you just saying what I want to hear to get me to sign? What? I asked, genuinely taken aback. She stepped closer, the scent of eucalyptus lotion filling the air. Who is she? She demanded. Who? I repeated, confused, stepping back as she closed the gap. The woman you've been seeing. Rachel. Who is she? I wondered how she knew about Rachel. Then it hit me. She was jealous. The sheer audacity of it made me laugh, which only fueled her anger. Is this funny to you? She snapped. Yeah, it is. The hypocrisy is hilarious. Ignoring my remark, she repeated, Who is she? I met her at the gym, I said flatly. Her response dripped with irony. The gym, of course. How do you know about her? I countered, shifting the focus. She hesitated, then admitted. I saw you at Golden Corral a few weeks ago, laughing with her. I got curious, so I went through your phone. You went through my phone? I gasped, feeling violated. You're not my wife anymore. Yeah, I saw text from a woman named Rachel and connected the dots. I almost got indignant, but remembered my own snooping during our separation. Instead, I shrugged. What does it matter? We're separated. You're with Logan. Did you expect me to stay celibate while you enjoyed being single? Her anger flickered, then faded. She looked down, her voice soft. I guess I didn't think about you with someone else. There was a hint of sadness in her tone. Instead of feeling vindicated, I felt offended. Oh, so because you didn't want me, you thought no one else would? You're putting words in my mouth, she defended. Your actions speak for themselves, I said, holding her gaze. Samantha looked like she wanted to argue but stopped herself. After a pause, she quietly admitted, You're right, Ethan. I didn't think another woman would be interested. But now that you've lost weight, she didn't finish, but I got the message. When I was overweight, she hadn't worried about me moving on. Now that I was fit, suddenly it mattered. It doesn't make a difference, Samantha. You're with Logan. You don't get to be jealous. A shadow crossed her face as she confessed, Logan and I broke up a while ago. She tried to sound indifferent, but her expression betrayed deeper emotions. Why? I asked, unsure how else to respond. She hesitated, then sighed. People meet, have fun, and then it's over. Not everyone rides off into the sunset. Sitting on the bed, she stared at the floor. We were supposed to, I said quietly, not realizing I'd spoken aloud until it was too late. Yeah, we were, she agreed, her eyes glistening. But somewhere along the way, we lost each other. It became all about chores, bills, and work. A tear slid down her cheek. Then I messed up, and now it's ruined. The twins are struggling, and I'm stuck looking at old photos wishing I could go back. Logan wasn't the problem. We were. He was just a symptom of what went wrong. I sat beside her, my voice softer now. We both let things slip, but we can't go back. We can only move forward. She turned to me, her eyes searching mine in a way I hadn't seen in years. Taking a deep breath, she grabbed my hand. I made a mistake, Ethan. I gave up on us. I gave up on you. Samantha, I started, trying to pull my hand away, but she held on tight, her grip firm. Before I could react, she leaned in and kissed me. Her hands, once so familiar, now felt unfamiliar as they pushed me back onto the bed. Samantha, what are you doing? I asked, confused. Don't talk. Just do this with me, she whispered, her voice low and pleading as she kissed my neck. For a moment, I almost gave in, but then an image of Logan flashed through my mind, a painful reminder of everything we'd been through. No, I said firmly, gently pushing her away. She fell back, surprised by my reaction. Ethan, no, she began, but I interrupted, jumping up as if the bed were burning. You can't keep doing this to me, Samantha. I'm not your fallback plan. You don't get to come back just because things didn't work out with Logan. You threw me away. You don't get to change your mind now. She sat in stunned silence, thinking. Then, in a quiet voice, she asked, Do you still love me? The question caught me off guard. It should have been an easy answer, but it wasn't. Seeing my hesitation, she took a step closer, holding both my hands. Be honest with yourself. Don't let pride answer for you. I thought back to everything, the good times, the bad, the memories of who we were. I realized that while I did love the Samantha of the past, the woman standing in front of me now wasn't the same person. And yet, she was. It was complicated. But deep down, I knew the truth. No, Samantha. Not that way. Not anymore. The weight of those words hung in the air. What had once broken me now devastated her. Tears streamed down her face as she backed away, looking at me like I was a stranger. You're lying, she said, her voice trembling. I know you still love me. I'm sorry, but I don't, I said gently. Too much has happened. Her sobs filled the room. I didn't know whether to comfort her or leave. In the end, I stood there, letting her process her emotions. After a few minutes, she wiped her tears and looked at me with a mix of anger and sadness. "You're enjoying this, aren't you?" she accused bitterly. "What? No. You love putting me in my place after what I did, don't you?" Her words were sharp, but I stayed calm. While I didn't enjoy her suffering, I couldn't deny that it felt like justice, a balancing of the scales after everything she had put me through. "Fine," I said, my voice steady. "Let's say I did enjoy it. Could you blame me?" She opened her mouth to argue, but I raised a hand to stop her. "Just listen. You gave up on me. You cheated. You ridiculed me, and you asked for a divorce. I didn't make the separation messy. I didn't expose you to the kids. I let you live your life with Logan without complaint. Even after all that, you didn't see anything worth fighting for in me. But now, after I lose some weight, suddenly I'm worth it? It's not just the weight," she cut in quickly. "Yes, I'm more attracted to you now, but it's more than that. You're different, more confident. You go out and do things. This is the you I've wanted all along." Her words hit hard. She had wanted me to change because who I was hadn't been enough. She still didn't get it, and I doubted she ever would. I could have argued about how selfish and unfair her expectations had been, but what was the point? I no longer needed her to understand. For the first time, I didn't care what she thought. I was free. "Do us both a favor, Samantha," I said firmly. "Sign the papers. Dragging this out isn't helping either of us." Without waiting for a response, I walked away, hearing her soft sobs as I left. 6 months later, it was official. The divorce papers in my hand were the last remnants of my marriage to Samantha, aside from the 2 kids now arguing over the remote in the living room. "Ben, Chloe, don't make me come out there," I called from my bedroom. Their shouting turned to hushed bickering. I sighed, refolding the documents and slipping them back into the envelope. No matter how much you've moved on, the finality of divorce stings. It's the closing of a chapter, a bittersweet blend of pain and new beginnings. My phone buzzed with a message from Rachel. "What are you up to, lover?" I smiled and texted back, "Thinking of you. Can't wait to see you again." Last night had been our first night together, and the memory made me grin. We had taken things slow, dating, spending time with each other's kids, and now we were ready to move forward. Later, after dropping the kids off at Samantha's, I noticed her puffy eyes. She must have received the same papers. She gave me a weak smile before closing the door. Driving to Ryan's place, I reflected on how far things had come. I'd been spending more time with him lately, helping him adjust to fatherhood. Today was Emma's baby shower, and since Ryan didn't want to be the only guy there, he'd asked me to join him. At the shower, Mom greeted me warmly. "Hey, Ethan. Ladies, it's my other son, the newly single one," she joked, making me blush as everyone cheered. After dropping off my gift, I found Emma on the couch. "Hey, preggers. How's my nephew?" I teased. She giggled. "We don't know yet. It could be your niece." "It's a nephew," Ryan interrupted. I laughed, teasing him about Karma possibly giving him a daughter. As the shower wrapped up, I stayed to help clean. Mom watched me curiously before saying, "There's something different about you lately. I can't explain it, but I like it." "Thanks, Mom," I said. "When I heard Emma was having Ryan's baby, I worried about him. He's not like you. We never had to worry about you. You were always going to be okay. But Ryan, he's different." "Mom, Ryan is stronger than you think. He'll be fine." She smiled, tears in her eyes. "I know. I'm proud of both of you." She hugged me tightly. As I drove home, the setting sun's glare made me pull down the visor. Catching a glimpse of myself in the mirror, I saw more than just a man who had lost weight. I saw someone responsible, loving, smart, hardworking, and a good father. I saw a man who genuinely wanted to be better and worked hard for it. That was the real man in the mirror.